What does it take for a shy, introvert, but ambitious young man to get the best cars, the most beautiful girls, and above all, more money than he could ever spend?
Been a rich man and I have been a poor man, and I choose rich every time.
The Wolf of Wall Street shows us a lifestyle that captivates many of us. But beyond the cheap moral lesson of whether what Jordan Belfort did was right or wrong, this film says more about human beings, about sheep and wolves, in the world we live in, and why the FBI agent, despite achieving its objective, still lost. In chaotic offices in New York, Jordan Belfort is playing darts with real people for $26,000. Born into a middle-class family, his parents were accountants who lived on outskirts of New York. But by the time he turned 26, he owned his own brokerage firm, and that year ended up earning almost $1 million a week. He also shows us his beautiful car, his wife Naomi, and his grand house, among many other things he mentions. He says there are 3 federal agencies looking for him, and he also tells us that he uses substances for everything. He basically consumes all of them, but his favorite one is money, since he says that enough of it makes you invincible. But the Jordan who started out is completely different from this Jordan. He wasn't born a wolf, he was born a sheep, although he always had the same ambition. He had a great talent, he knew how to sell like few others. Jordan Belfort, around 22 years old, is incredibly ambitious and determined to achieve his dream of becoming a millionaire. After his meat and seafood delivery business fails, he decided to dive headfirst into Wall Street to become a stockbroker and fill his pockets. There, he meets Mark Hanna, a professional stockbroker, who sees great potential in Jordan, and that's when his initiation into the unfamiliar world begins. We see Jordan surprised by everything Mark tells him about the job, humble because he listens attentively and clearly wants to learn, and also altruistic since he asks if it's better to help people while also making money.
Same time, it's advantageous to everyone, correct? No.
This contrast between the two characters is extremely noticeable. Mark drinks 3 martinis while Jordan drinks water. Mark does drugs, and Jordan asks him how he manages to do drugs and work. Mark is unhinged and is completely out of control, while Jordan is seen as measured and calm person. Broadly speaking, Mark teaches him in the harsh rules of this game. We see a wolf teaching a sheep how to survive in this market.
Name of the game? Move the money from your client's pocket into your pocket.
The market is too volatile, and for a broker, the only thing that matters is commissions. What should really matter to him is that his clients never ever withdraw their money and that they're always investing. His recommendations are for him to feed the geese to keep the blood flowing, do a lot of substance, and hire women who provide love for money to keep up with the pace of this business. And of course, like a good apprentice, Jordan follows all his advice. Here, the film proposes a question. Are humans born evil, or is it the environment that makes them evil? In this case, his first boss would be responsible for leading the seemingly sweet and innocent boy down the wrong path. Or did he simply awaken something that was already inside him? During the following 6 months, and when he finally managed to become certified as a broker, on his first day of work, Black Monday occurred. A day that ruined the stock market and left Jordan and many others in the industry without work. Now Jordan is unemployed and looking for any job to climb the corporate ladder. But his wife, Teresa, finds an ad in a newspaper seeking brokers. So Jordan goes to the offices of Investor Center, which bears no resemblance to the grand buildings of Wall Street. Everything is very humble. They explain to him that they sell over-the-counter stocks, companies not listed on exchange, with very low prices but high commissions. On Wall Street, he earned 1% of what he sold, but here, the commissions is 50%. They sell to ordinary people without much knowledge, and the market doesn't seem to be very regulated. So he starts calling right away. He starts calling ordinary clients, common people, and uses all his smooth talk, charisma, and audacity to sell promises. He lies through his teeth. He says the company is going to boom and that they're about to miss the biggest opportunity of their lives. While his coworkers are out there toiling away to earn 40 to 50, Jordan closes deals earning thousands of dollars in commission and surprising everyone. And this is when our character's mindset begins to transform and become more and more like Mark's. One day, while having coffee, Jordan is introduced to a guy named Don, who is his neighbor in the building. Don doesn't understand why Jordan is doing so well if they live in the same neighborhood, so he asks him what he does for a living and how much he earns a month. Jordan replies that he's earned $72,000 this previous month.
You pay stuff for $72,000 on it. I quit my job right now and I work for you. Hey, listen, I quit.
And he did quit his job.
Yeah.
But even though penny stocks were making good money, it was still far from what he wanted. He wanted to play the big fish's game, but without the big fish's rules. And that's when he got the idea to start his own brokerage firm. So he arranged a meeting with several guys who all seemed like good salesmen because they all sold drugs. Among them was one named Brad, who also sells illegal substances. He wasn't interested in getting into the business, since he was doing well enough with his own.
Hey, Ma, we got chicken or what?
But when they challenged him to simulate selling a pencil, he excelled at creating a need. And that's precisely what Jordan Belfort needs to do. Make people believe they need the stock so he can collect all the commissions over time. Even though they knew how to sell, Jordan teaches them some of the technical aspects of the market, and most importantly, how to do what he knows best. Use his smooth talk to manipulate people into buying the stocks he wants. And it works. And that's where the Wolf of Wall Street begins to show us the leadership skills as well. Jordan teaches in the best way possible, by leading by example. This earns his team's trust and respect and support for his decisions. However, Jordan arrives with a gift for his wife, who doesn't approve of what he's doing. She suggests it might be better to sell the shares to wealthy people who don't mind losing a few $1,000s. But Jordan replies that those kinds of people are too clever, which is why they can't sell to them. Because of this conversation, Jordan now wants to give the company a new identity. And the new objective is to appear as a top-tier company in order to offer over-the-counter shares, or junk shares, to wealthy people. And this way, the company's growth is exponential, and to keep employees happy, it is common to hold wild parties while everything is literally included. The company has grown so much that it's under FBI scrutiny, and this is where the film delivers one of the biggest hidden provocations in the story. I say this because the relationship between Jordan and the FBI agents goes far beyond a simple game of cat and mouse, of cops and robbers. It's a duel of values, of morals and integrity, and what if these values actually serve any purpose in the real world? But we'll explore this dilemma a little later as the plot unfolds. All of this also caught Forbes' attention, where they publish it but under the pseudonym of the Wolf of Wall Street, since they see him as a perverse Robin Hood who steals from the rich to give it to himself and his gang of brokers. His wife tells him that there's no such thing as bad publicity, and of course, the next day, it was full of people wanting to work for him and get rich. Each time, the parties start to escalate and become a real mess. Excess. That's the word that defines Jordan Belfort in this stage of his life. The movie portrays the Stratton employees as animals, satisfying their most primitive impulses, such as having shameless intimacy in front of anyone and being aggressively like beasts. Jordan also brought his father to work with him, as he was very strict and in theory would be the one to bring order to the company. Even so, they still throw parties, now trying to keep it a secret from his father.
What are these sides? They cure cancer?
The sides did cure cancer. That's the problem. They were there. That's why they were expensive.
When he realized how much money they were spending on parties and women of easy virtue, he was furious and told Jordan he would one day face the consequences of all the obscene madness. Jordan earns millions of dollars. He uses drugs heavily, drinks constantly, and throws wild parties, and things gradually begin to spiral out of control. The way Stratton Oakmont made money was illegal and is known as a pump and dump. First, Stratton would buy thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of stocks in a very small company whose shares had little to no movement in the market. Furthermore, these shares had the peculiarity of being very cheap. Then, with their more than 1,000 employees, they sold a ridiculous amount of shares of that company, calling all kinds of people and lying, assuring them that this investment would be the best they would ever make. This generated greater demand, so naturally the share's price rose. When it reached an extremely high price, the company sold all the shares he had bought, earning millions and millions of dollars. Then, naturally, the shares dropped drastically to prices much lower than initial ones. So the clients who had bought lost all or almost all of their invested money. If the clients wanted to sell the shares when the price was high, the brokers prevented them from doing so. They only allowed them to sell the shares when the price was at a rock bottom.
Is all this legal? Absolutely not.
Apparently, Jordan has several psychopathic traits, as he lacks empathy and feelings of guilt. He experiences fear differently, is egocentric, impulsive, a liar, and manipulative. But we again question whether he was born this way, or whether the environment excess made him extremely bitter. Let's remember that when his wife approached him for taking money from working people, he felt bad and changed his business model. But as the excess grew, that sweet and kind young man was lost, and the limits of his morality was disappearing. This is a point in the director's favor. Despite the film's seemingly superficial nature, it becomes quite profound when viewed from a different perspective. It's as if the film is showing us that the more you cross the line, the more you fall into decadence, darkness, and degeneracy.
Crossing over the line of what's right and wrong in tiny, imperceptible steps until one day you turn around and you're so far over the line and everything seems normal.
At one of the parties, they were trying to brainstorm ideas to grow the company. So the plan was to find a company to take public and thus improve the reputation and avoid being under constant scrutiny. But they had a different way of brainstorming, getting high on drugs until they found a good idea. Donnie, who was nearly knocked out by Clues, remembered a schoolmate who had a line of women's shoes called
Steve Madden.
a beautiful girl named Naomi arrives at the party and Jordan falls in love with her. He starts flirting with her, even with his wife Nerby. They become lovers, and soon, Teresa discovers he's cheating on her with Naomi. While she cries, she asks him who he is. It's as if he were a completely different person. Teresa asks him if he loves Naomi. Jordan says he feels horrible. So after 3 days, they divorce and he moves in with Naomi. The AC lawyers suspect illegal activity, so they go to audit the company, but Jordan leaves them in a conference room with the air conditioning set as low as possible and hands them a bunch of unnecessary papers to hinder their task. Jordan proposed to Naomi and threw a bachelor party where they destroyed an entire floor of the hotel where they were staying. The cost of all this was $2 million. He married Naomi in Bahamas, where he met Aunt Emma, who came from London. He gives Naomi a yacht as a gift. That's where they spend their honeymoon. After that, they buy a house in one of the most exclusive areas. Years in living in an uncontrolled manner, his downfall will begin. 18 months later, they have a daughter and experience significant marital problems due to Jordan's infidelity and drug addiction. That same day was Steve Madden's initial public offering, where shares were going up for sale, but Jordan and Donnie already bought 85% of the shares, a prohibited act, but one that would make them very rich.
$22 million in 3 hours!
Public speaking is one of our character's most outstanding qualities, which also goes hand in hand with his ability to sell. Jordan justifies their practices in part by the very nature of the stock market. As Mark explained to him, nobody knows when the stock market will fall or rise, not even stockbrokers. It doesn't matter what they tell clients or advisors, because ultimately, they're all talking about something unreal and completely unstable. So they prefer to advise them so that the client's money ends up in their own pockets. Easy sheep to deceive and hunt. Scorsese's direction immerses us in Jordan's subjectivity as he hunts his victims because he makes these clients invisible by not giving them screen time, as if they were irrelevant. We only hear a voice on the back of a phone, which makes it harder to establish emotional connections with these scammed clients. Jordan firmly adheres to the law of the strongest, because fraud, evading the law, and money laundering are the ways he inserts himself over society.
When I have to face my problems, I show up in the back of a limo and a $40,000 gold watch.
Meanwhile, an FBI agent has Jordan under surveillance and has his entire circle of friends under close scrutiny. He even requested the wedding video from the cameraman who filmed it. But Jordan has a private investigator, a former police officer, who provides him with the profile of the FBI agent. The investigator advises him to keep low profile, under no circumstances attempt to bribe him. However, Jordan ignores all of this and invites him onto his yacht, and with a caviar, lobster, and champagne, and 2 women whom he casually introduces as friends from his company. This is all part of a trap. Jordan suddenly tries to show us what he could be experiencing. It's that old psychological game of planting doubt. Want to try it? Want to taste? Look how much better my life is than yours. They're not hungry at all. Jordan wants to bribe the agent to see if he'll ease up on the investigation. And in one of his moves, he says he knows in the past he tried to become a stockbroker on Wall Street, but was unsuccessful. And that's why he ended up in the FBI. And then he asked that mischievous question. He asked if he ever stopped to think how different his life would be if he managed to pursue a career as a broker. And the agent even reveals a certain frustration.
When I'm riding home on the subway and my balls are fucking sweating, I'm wearing the same suit 3 days in a row. Yeah, you.
So wait a minute, did the guy who's investigating Jordan today ever want to be like him? He was once a greedy young man who tried to get into Wall Street to make money as a broker. So maybe the difference between them isn't character, but circumstances. Because while the door opened for Jordan, he entered the market, learned the game of money, of greed, liked it, and ended up addicted to it. The agent was stopped right at the beginning. They didn't even get a taste of it. And that's probably why he even developed a hatred for that world. He left, joined the FBI, and started arresting precisely the guys he himself could have become. And in this trajectory, morality became his greatest ally, the symbol of what a worthy man is to him. While money was the path where he was rejected, he decided to choose the path of supposed moral superiority. After a few minutes, he started hinting that he couldn't help financially, but the officer wasn't interested and tried to break him by asking him to repeat his offer. Jordan agreed, and the officer asked him if he wanted to bribe a police officer. The agent goes even further and provokes Jordan by saying that the vast majority of guys he investigates are guys who were born into that environment, born among wolves, and didn't have much of a way out of it. Jordan was born a sheep, and yet he chose to become this degenerate, as if with his speech he was saying, "You are one of us, but you decided to become one of them, and therefore you're even worse." This gets him very mad, and he kicks the agents off his boat.
Good luck on that subway ride home to your miserable, ugly wives.
Let's analyze a bit the part of becoming rotten, as the agent mentioned regarding Jordan. For that, let's take an example. We all know people who are extremely moralistic, who always say that they're doing the right thing. For example, if a person claims to be faithful, are they really faithful? Or is it only because no other woman is attracted to them? If he had the life of Jordan, would he still be the faithful man he claims to value so much? What I want you to realize is that it's easy to be good when no one has given you the power to be evil. Many people consider themselves moral and righteous, but sometimes what they really lack is opportunity. And the point here is not to say that we're all rotten or that no one is good, much less to try to justify these shameless people. Because if we think about it from another perspective, the FBI agent himself is proof of the contrary. He had the chance to become corrupt, and he didn't. We'll see how all this ends and who the real winner really is. Now the plans have changed. Their destination is Switzerland, where they intend to hide their money, since one of their friends knows a banker and arranged a meeting. But for the trip, he takes a large quantity of substances. Now, we see it much more out of control than ever before, and on the plane, everything turns into chaos. So he ends the flight strapped into his seat. At the bank, he'll meet banker. He explains that basically the US government can't take their money. It's safe in his bank. It's even safer if the accountant isn't in Jordan's name. Now, they need someone with a European passport to open the account so they can enter with a lot of money without problems. He's going to talk to Aunt Emma and explains the situation. He's determined to convince her at all costs. She agrees and tells him to take care of Naomi, and she'll handle the rest. They'll also use Brad's wife, who was born in Switzerland, along with her whole family. This way, they transfer millions of dollars to the bank. On the other hand, Don also has millions to take, but he doesn't want to work with him. There's a fight, but he finally agrees. When he meets up with Tony to pick up the money, they get into another argument, which causes the briefcase with the money to fall, just as the police are passing by. Donnie manages to escape. Later, Donnie, very worried about the situation, wants to prevent Jordan from finding out Brad was arrested, so he offers him lewds. They've been stored for years and were the holy grail of lewds. They take one, but after a while, it doesn't seem to have any effect, so they take the rest to see if anything happens. Meanwhile, the private investigator calls Jordan and tells him to get away from his house and call him from somewhere else. So he goes to a country club more than a mile from his family. The investigator informs him that Brad was arrested and that they have all his house and office phones tapped. At that moment, the pill started to take effect and skipped all the normal stages of the drug, leaving him in a state of paralysis. He crawls to his car and manages to get in. He drives back home as slow as he can. While Donnie was on the phone with the banker, Jordan tried to get him to hang up quickly as possible, but they were both too high when he mentioned Brad's name. Don escaped, knowing he was in prison because of him. In the heat of the moment, he decides to eat something, but it got stuck in his throat and he collapsed. Unable to breathe, Jordan had to snort snow to recover and save Don's life. He was arrested because he might not make it home, but he was released because he had no proof that he was the one driving the car. Brad, on the other hand, spent 3 months in prison. Jordan was offered a deal. He would have to plead guilty to criminal charges and pay a fine of several $1,000,000, as well as leave the company. If he chooses to stay, the FBI would be on his case, and he would end up in jail. His father advised him to accept the deal.
Okay, you got all the money in the world. You need everybody else's money?
However, when he was in the office giving his final words to everyone, he said goodbye, almost in tears, but decided to stay. As we were able to see, he seems his greed has no limits, even more than health and family, and this is where the real downfall starts.
No, sweetie. She's dead and she's not going anywhere.
Brad gets out of jail, and they throw him a celebration. Jordan wants to pay him for his time in prison, but Brad wants nothing more to do with the company. Jordan mentions that 2 years later, he died of a heart attack. Because Jordan didn't fulfill the deal, the FBI agent notified to go after him, so they began to interrogate all the staff. But nobody says anything. They were advised not to leave the country, but of course they did, and went to Italy. So they were running his company. They get a call and tells him that Steve Madden is selling all his shares, which really belong to Jordan, but are in his name. So Jordan orders that he must sell all of Steve Madden's shares quickly to lower the price. Then Naomi arrives crying on the boat, seeing that her Aunt Emma has died. Jordan is worried about this since the $20 million Swiss account is in her name. So he calls the banker, who tells him not to worry because he has a document leaving Jordan as heir. But Jordan has to be in Switzerland the next day. Despite the fact that a massive storm was approaching, he forced the captain of his yacht to travel there, even though he's risking the lives of his family and friends. And he shows no remorse. The only thing he can think of is lewds.
Will not die sober. Get the loads!
As expected, it all ended very badly. After being rescued by an Italian military helicopter, after 2 years, Jordan was clean and became a television personality. He was filming commercials where he sold persuasion courses and promised people financial freedom, practices that are still abundant on social media today. While filming one of these commercials, he was arrested by the FBI. The banker is arrested in Miami. He had other investigations for money laundering related to drug trafficking, so this investigation, which had nothing to do with Jordan, was also related to him. He is charged with a series of offenses but is released on $10 million bail, and placed under house arrest. Donnie comes to visit him. Jordan tells him he will have to mortgage the house and sell a lot of his stuff to pay the fine and the lawyers, but Donnie tells him that the company will take care of it. Later, he has a meeting with the FBI officers who tell him that they have a strong case against him. He could give him about 20 years in prison. For this reason, they offer him a deal of exchange for him ratting out his friends and showing the FBI how the stock market works. Naomi tells him she wants a divorce. He relapses into his addiction, which causes him to lose his temper and hit her, trying to take their children with him and causing an accident. It is clear that this man has fallen to the lowest possible depths, going beyond ruining his own life to ruining the lives of his loved ones. In a montage, we see the FBI arresting dozens of traitors from his company. Thanks to this, he's sentenced only 36 months in a 5-star prison where he doesn't seem to be having a bad time. And here comes one of the points that went too unnoticed in the film. Who really won? The film shows us even though the agent succeeded in arresting Jordan, he doesn't smile, not even when Jordan is taken to serve his sentence, of which he would only serve 22 months. Then, we see him on the train track back home, sweating, wearing the same suit for 3 days. As I mentioned before, even more so when we pay attention to the lyrics of the song while the agent looks disappointed. It's as if Jordan was right when he said,
Money talks and bullshit takes the bus.
Only instead of a bus, it would be the train. If, on paper, ancient Dopamine won, it's a bittersweet victory. Even though Belfort has lost everything by the end of the film, his life is still ostensibly better, at least by his own terms, than that of the man who brought him to justice, whose life remains exactly the same. And I think that the fact that the film revealed that the agent wanted to become a broker before joining the FBI leaves it up to each viewer to draw their own conclusion about the agent's motivation. But what is undeniable is that despite the offers, he didn't let himself be corrupted. Or perhaps it's just the agent realizing that Jordan was right after all. That's for you to draw your own conclusions. Agent Dopamine doesn't look particularly satisfied in the scene, but he has accepted his life. While Jordan spent a few months in prison, Dopamine is serving a life sentence in the middle America, which in a materialistic world that only cares about money, this decides to be the exception, and each person chooses if this is the right decision. Belfort, after serving his brief time in prison, did go on to becoming a very successful motivational speaker and continued to be successful, measuring success in terms of dollars. Even after he was brought to the justice system, he received a small slap on the wrist and served 2 years in prison. The last scene is the real Jordan Belfort introducing himself at a conference, and what we see in the scene is him being valued, respected, and applauded by desperate sheep. In fact, what is most striking in this final scene is the focus that Scorsese gives to the faces of those people. He makes a point of framing the expression of each one of them very closely. You can feel the glazed look, the blind attention, the almost childlike desperation. With all that being discussed, I believe the film doesn't specifically glorify breaking the law and taking people away. We even see that the fall of man to the lowest possible point, consumed by his most basic impulses, where he ends up hurting his loved ones. But also, the movie shows the flaws in the system. Jordan is just a reflection of this. Like Jordan, there are thousands, and even worse. With the final shot, the film shows that we are complicit by letting ourselves be seduced by this, by admiring the wolves and forgetting the sheep, like the agent, an honest person who caught the criminal but will ultimately be forgotten.